Gwen Preston of Resource Mayven. I'm here for a catch-up with Chris Taylor of Great Bear. We both just came back from the big PDAC conference, which means we're both exhausted, but it was a really exciting week in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Last time we spoke, we only talked about the Dixie Lake project, which is clearly your main one, and we'll get to that in a minute. But since then, some interesting stuff has been happening around your secondary project. So let's talk a little bit about that. It's West Madison. It's actually very close to Dixie Lake.
Yep.
And you have a neighbor in Pure Gold Mining who has basically made a new discovery right across the property line.
Yeah, correct. Pure Gold's been actively drilling right up basically within about a kilometer or a bit more or a bit less than a kilometer from our claim boundary. So they issued some numbers recently which were really impressive. There was, for instance, a highlight interval of about 8 meters of 33 grams gold.
Right.
So that's pretty impressive, and I believe that's right from surface. So we've read their news releases, and we've seen that they're announcing another series of 11 holes, which they've drilled also towards our claim boundary. So I think that's something that our investors would be very interested to see published.
Absolutely. We're sort of checking every morning to see if Pure Gold's put out any more numbers.
And wishing them all the success in the world.
Absolutely. And you guys have done some work. You haven't done a huge amount of work at West Madison, but you've done enough geophysics and mapping to have some confidence that the structure on which Pure Gold has made their discovery continues right across the property line onto your ground. Yeah,
that's right. Last summer we did a high-resolution airborne mag survey. It was at about 50-meter line spacing, which is really tight for an airborne survey. What that showed us was that, at Madsen, the main geological control over some of this wedge zone mineralization is what they call it, is sort of the south contact of an ultramafic unit and the surrounding host rocks. And there's some structure that goes through that area. So what we see when we look at our mag survey is it looks like that ultramafic unit continues along the northern part of our claim block. And we also did some prospecting there last summer, so we were coming up with some sort of gram range intercepts, which are actually in Red Lake very good. Usually you're on top of a zone or you're completely dead. Right. So when you get mineralization of that style with silica, sulphites, and gold, we know we're in mineralization. So what we see is basically the same south contact that they appear to be drilling right now at Pure Gold. Looks like it extends across our claims as well.
And then quickly, clearly you're waiting for Pure Gold's numbers, see what else they can delineate in the wedge zone and whether those numbers look like they're coming closer to the claim boundary. But what's Great Bear going to do at West Madison this year? What's your take on the new scenario?
Well, we'll be out prospecting as soon as the snow melts, basically. We did a couple of days of work there last year, but really for us, the primary focus was Dixie Lake. That's where we have the high-grade gold. That's where there's 160 drill holes. West Madison, it's a very, it's an earlier stage project, so there's some trenching, a bit of historic drilling, but really we'll get back in there, map, prospect, possibly some trenching, and then we'd be ready for some drilling probably towards the end of the summer.
Right. And so West Madison's here, only about 20 kilometers away is Dixie Lake.
Yeah,
25?
It's a little bit less than that, actually.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, the Dixie Lake is a very big project. It's about 23 kilometers long.
Right.
So I believe it's within about 10 kilometers of the West Madison project.
And Dixie is, of course, where you're drilling. This is the more advanced project. There's been historic work. You guys have done an initial drill program later in the second half of last year.
Yep.
Now you're going back in, and I'm really excited about this drill program. Perhaps you are as well.
Maybe.
Because there's sort of 4 targets, and I see success on any one of those 4 targets as having the as sort of changing the potential scale of the deposit here quite significantly.
Yeah, that's right, Gwen. What we saw when we did that same mag survey I just mentioned was this big, it looks like almost a regional scale structure. It's about 20 kilometers long that runs across our project. We actually did the survey and expanded the claim boundaries so that they covered that structure.
Right.
And what we see is there's gold hits along it. Most of it hasn't been prospected yet, but there's gold hits along it over at least about 2.5 kilometers. So with the drilling that we're going to do, we're going to show the size of the system by drilling about 2 kilometers away from where our last drill holes were. And then it looks like our zone may actually fold tightly back around on itself. Yeah. That's very interesting to us because if that's the case, it could sort of double the prospective stratigraphy that we can approach. So what you're alluding to is the fact that we can go and we can drill that extension that's over 2 kilometers away and then drill around the hinge of this fold where there's also very high grade hits and the other limb of it as well, which would, there's some 5 to 9 gram intercepts on it, but very little drilling so far.
Right.
So I think together, collectively, that would show really large scale potential for our high-grade gold system at Dixie Lake.
And the other thing at Dixie is you have found gold across more than one stratigraphic unit, which also just suggests the strength of a mineralizing system here. So then it just adds to the argument that it could be quite a large system, and now you're sort of going to test that in a couple specific targets.
It certainly has the main hallmarks you look for in Red Lake. It's got a big, deep-seated structure. That's what you tend to see around the main mines in the area. And it's got mineralization, like you said, in just about every rock unit. So it doesn't seem to care what the host unit is as long as there's structural preparation.
Right.
The alteration brackets around these things, you know, we see this iron carbonate alteration. It's up to 150 meters wide on our zone. That shows that there's a great deal of fluid flow that went through there. And again, it sort of checks off these boxes that you look for size potential on a Red Lake high-grade gold system.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the update, and certainly we'll stay posted on what you're doing, what Pure Gold's doing, and everyone else is doing in the Red Lake District.
Thanks very much, Gwen.
Thanks.
I appreciate the time.